Hello, friends. Because I'm sharing the screen, I can't see your face, and that's making me a little sad. Um, but I have brought a wonderful story to read to you today, and I'm so happy you're here because this is a story that I've read many times before, and I think you'll enjoy it because in the past, other children and adults have enjoyed this story, and I personally just really love this story. Here is a book, Tilly and the Wall. So this is a story written by Leone. By the way, in our library, we have a couple of other stories written by Leone. Um, there is, now I'm suddenly blanking their titles. I'll remember them and tell you maybe at the end. But if you like the story, you might want to look for other stories by Leone. And I'm looking at the cover itself and I'm already thinking the title says Tilly and the Wall. And there's probably then a Tilly in this story and a wall in this story. And in the cover, I see that here is the wall. And here, I think this must be Tilly. And these are probably the two most important characters in this book. So as I read the story, please listen to the words of the story, but also you will hear, in addition to the voice of the story, which is Leone's words that I'm reading to, you'll also hear a little bit of my second voice. All of us have this second voice, our own thinking, like whatever we're doing in life, we're thinking. And when we're reading also, that thinking voice is going on, and you're going to hear a little bit of my thinking voice. One of my first things that I'm thinking about as I look at the cover is that if this is a story with animals in it, and I have read stories with animals in them before, like everybody knows the story of the khargosh and the kachua, the hare and the tortoise, in which the hare is so fast and the tortoise is so slow. And a little bit at a time, I think I've come to understand that that story might also be about not just a hare and a tortoise, but as in many animal stories, it might be about people. So I wonder if this story is going to similarly be about people. So, Tilly and the Wall by Leone. The wall had been there ever since the mice could remember. They never paid attention to it. They never asked themselves what was on the other side, nor for that matter if there were another side at all. They went about their business as if the wall didn't exist. I can see in the picture their business includes um, getting food together. The mice loved to talk. They chatted endlessly about this and that, but no one ever mentioned the wall. Only Tilly, the youngest, would stare at it. Can you see Tilly? She's standing apart from everyone. She would stare at it, wondering about the other side. At night, while the others were asleep, she would lie in her bed of straw, wide awake, imagining beyond the wall a beautiful, fantastic world inhabited by strange animals and plants. How wide awake her eyes are, and oh, the strange animals and plants. I wonder if Tilly woke up in the morning and drew the picture of what she was imagining the night before, and the wall is still there. We must see the other side, she told her friends. Let us try to climb. They tried, but as they climbed, the wall seemed higher and higher. I'm really happy to see that Tilly has friends. Oh, here they are, all three of them. With a long, rusty nail, they tried to make a hole to peep through. Yeah, I want to know what's on the other side of the wall, too. It is only a question of patience, said Tilly. But after working an entire morning, they gave up, exhausted, without having made even a dent in the hard stone. The wall must end somewhere, Tilly said. They walked and walked for many hours. The wall apparently had no end. It's a huge wall. But one day, not far from the wall, Tilly saw a worm digging itself into the black earth. How could she not have thought of that before? Why hadn't anyone thought of that before? There's the tail from the worm. Ooh, she's getting an idea. I wonder if any of you know what the idea is that she's getting. I have a guess. Full of excitement, Tilly began to dig. She dug and she dug. Such a big tunnel. I wonder if it will get her to the other side. Until suddenly, almost blinded by the bright sunlight, she was on the other side of the wall. She couldn't believe her eyes. Before her were mice, regular mice. The mice gave Tilly a great welcome party. They took her to their celebration pebble. Had she seen that before somewhere? They made speeches in her honor and waved flags. I think I have seen this before. If I was doing this read aloud with a book in my hand, I would be quickly flipping back because I think I have seen this pebble before. Then they decided to go through Tilly's tunnel to see for themselves what the other side was like. One by one, they followed Tilly. And when the mice on Tilly's side of the wall saw what Tilly had discovered, there was another party. The mice threw confetti. Everyone shouted, Tilly, Tilly, Tilly. And they carried Tilly high in the air in triumph. Since that day, the mice go freely from one side of the wall to the other. And they always remember that it was Tilly who showed them the way first. So I started the story thinking about whether this is a story about mice. And now I'm also thinking, is this a story about a wall, or is it a story about a wall and another kind of wall, maybe a metaphorical wall? So much to think about in this story. I have faced walls in my life, and sometimes it's the wall around my colony where I live, and it's supposed to keep us safe, and it's a physical wall. Right now there's a lockdown happening, and they have made a rule that some people cannot come inside that wall, that physical wall, into the colony. Only people who live in the colony and have houses in the colony can come in. So I know my own physical wall could be another kind of wall too. I am going to stop sharing the story and come back to all of you. And this is a very favorite story of mine, Tilly and the Wall, because I love thinking when I'm reading. And I was thinking throughout the story, and I'm thinking that maybe all of you were thinking also, perhaps about the questions I was thinking about, but perhaps you had other questions. I was thinking about Tilly herself, and I was thinking about the wall and what it means. And throughout, I kept wondering, is she going to make it to the other side? And who will help her? And what will she find? I wonder what you were thinking about. So, Michael, sir, I think we could move into the breakout rooms.
We're going to keep the discussion in this group because we're running
Okay.
a little bit behind schedule. And um, so let's think about this read aloud a little bit. And in a second, I will put some ideas of things we could talk about into the chat. But maybe first, I guess, a little, so the questions I'll put in are more general questions. But before we do that, maybe we could just think a little bit about the walls that we might have in our lives, because I'm thinking myself about that. It's I love this story. Anyone have walls that you would connect to? And you can speak out or you can put it in the chat. Arti?
Yeah, I was thinking, thank you so much, Mridula, for this story. I actually haven't read it before, so it was really wonderful. And I was thinking all kinds of walls. I was thinking historical walls. I was thinking um, displacement, partitions, but I was also thinking mental walls, and that, like, I not only I mean, even as children, we encounter, like, any sort of obstacle is a wall, whether physical or mental, or even in daily life, and how, like, it seems so um it can seem like, okay, we don't need to, like, we can ignore it, or we can really, like, dig deep and get to the other side, or to the bottom of it. So I mean, it's an amazing story. I'm going to be looking up the author and more stories by them. Thank you.
Any other walls that people could think about in this story? Other connections you might make to, like, the idea of a metaphor is a really big idea, and when you bring this story to older library members, you get all kinds of interesting answers. I'll tell you a little bit, if not now, but after I hear some more folks. Who else has something to share? I'm watching the screen. Go ahead and speak up. I see.
Yes, Tolesh is here. For me, wall. Um, Sometimes I just worried to, for example, speak in English or anything that I can't do. So that I was actually I was relating with me. So wall means anything that we just see another side. It just restrict, but just try to go out that side. You may get something, or you may be successful. So just try out. That I learned from that, and I got that message.
Wonderful. Zarina?
It's interesting because in the end of, like, the other side of the wall, Tilly found other people. And I feel like uh maybe the biggest wall in my life is whatever presumptions I have that keep me from like understanding other people or connecting with other people. And sometimes the hardest part about that wall is when you can feel it, but you don't quite know why it's there or how to get past it. And so that's the part of the story that really resonated with me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. When we've done this story in the past, someone, I think Apurva, said that sometimes reading controversial books can be challenging. But the funny thing about this book is it doesn't look controversial at all. But when you get older members discussing it, they will. I mean, think about, what are the walls that separate us? Religion, caste, gender. These things, I'm not making this up. They come up with these things because once you get them thinking, they realize all kinds of things separate us from each other. And you can have some really amazing discussions if you do that. Now, what I'd like us to do is to turn towards thinking about this in terms of the craft, the kinds of techniques that we saw. I unfortunately put this in twice into the chat, sorry. But what kind of tips, what kind of techniques did you see? Where did you see Mridula ma'am's thoughts? What read aloud tips from the infographic did you see? That kind of stuff. So let's share out some of what we noticed from the point of view of read aloud practitioners, storytellers. Arti, do you have something?
The first thing was the way she welcomed us, uh, then told us how this was a favorite book, and that sort of makes you think, oh, then it must be something really nice, and you look forward to hearing the story when you hear that it's someone's favorite book and that she has read it many times. And then about this wall, of course, the title again. So those tips were there: welcoming, talking about the book, introducing the cover, showing the picture, talking about the cover picture, the cover of the book. And then, of course, in this, it was not a real book, but even then, we were able to see the book as she was reading.
Yep.
And so that is important, because some of us will be trying to read with her or look at the pictures or look at some other aspect of it. And so we sometimes tend to think ahead when we look at the book, what may be happening. And wherever she is stopping to ask, oh, like she was sharing her thoughts, her ideas also in between.
Yep. What other things did you notice as far as practitioner folks? I mean, other tips?
Yeah.
Mm,
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I like the way she brought our attention to the author and casually mentioned that he has written more stories. So kind of including us or prompting us to read more stories. And then also making the title quite interesting, that is it about animals or is it about people, then connecting it to another story, a very famous and well heard story of Hare and the Tortoise. And of course she brought in her curiosity, she wanted to know what was so she used that tip, that I want to know what is on the other side of the wall. So she used all the tips for read aloud. And last, of course, when she brought up the metaphorical wall and asked, kind of encouraged us all to think about the wall.
again, the voice modulation, but in again we can do it better. The voice modulation, maybe she's engaging, but we don't know children or the people how they will engage. So the in physical space, though we do voice modulation. So it for me it's just I am not a regular English listener or the speaker. So for me, I'm not grasping that story. So if you want to introduce children as a second language, English as a second language, then it's very much important to um, you can act or something voice modulations kind of technique.
So one thing I'll say is that if this were taught to second language speakers, there would be more scaffolding, she would use more Hindi to sort of set up the story so that comprehension wouldn't be an issue. So there's other things we would do if this were being read aloud to people who, for members who didn't understand English.
What do we actually do in scaffolding?
Sorry, what?
What do we actually do in scaffolding, while scaffolding?
Well, so scaffolding is when you sort of, you think what, so it's better to give a little bit up front, explain a little bit, introduce the story a little bit, rather than wait until the story's done and realize that no one understood it. So scaffolding, you only put up as much scaffolding as you think you need. It could just be, you might pose a question, or you might give a little background before you read the story. Then the students don't feel like you're explaining the story afterwards, right? They feel like, I mean, this is just a trick, but it's an important one. It's better to tell a little background, a little introduction. They're more likely to understand and follow the story. And you might point them to a question like in the read aloud Mridula did, she said, yeah, sometimes, you know, stories about animals are also about people. And she said, maybe the wall is a really important character. So you get this idea that, oh, I should be thinking about, now for students, you might do a little more for you. Okay, does that make sense? It could be you have to tell some vocabulary because you know your students don't know certain words. It could be you just give a little bit of a, not a summary where you tell what's going to happen for sure, but just a little background so that when they start reading the story, they'll sort of have their mind in the right place. Okay.